Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Former unified super featherweight champion Mikaela Mayer posted a tweet about 1 or 2 days ago that reads, "So after 24 hours of negotiation, Choi is suddenly injured, laughing my ass off. What a joke she is." The WBA's annual convention was a few days ago and it has since concluded. Word around the campfire seems to be that Hearn Choi is claiming an injury. What injury she sustained and when? It's not clear right now, though that's the story per Dan Raphael of Fight Freaks Unite. Hearn Choi is injured and will be unable to unify titles with Alicia Baumgartner in the first quarter of next year in New York City, where she is expected to feature on a card. Co-feature. The fight between them was ordered, you understand, ordered by way of the WBA. There was a scheduled price bid and everything, but it has since been canceled because Hearn Choi is saying she's injured. According to Dan Raphael, the fight will not take place anytime soon. But if she is so injured, so hindered from competition that she cannot comply with this order, and she's not set to return anytime soon, per Dan Raphael's tweet. I have it on good authority that WBA are going to move to label Hearn Choi a champion in recess. I have it on good authority that the wheels are already in motion to put somebody else in there with Alicia Baumgartner for what could soon be the newly vacated WBA title, that the show is set to go on with or without Hearn Choi. Sky Nicholson already hinted at her ring return, which coincidentally is set to go down right around the same time that this card is supposed to go down. The card that will feature Alicia Baumgartner and some other fighter for the vacant WBA title on the undercard of Serrano versus Cruz. Amanda Serrano versus Erica Cruz, the undisputed featherweight title fight that is also set to feature the undisputed super featherweight title fight, the one with Alicia. And this show that could feature 2 undisputed title fights at 2 separate weights is set to go down in early February. Australian import Sky Nicholson is set to make an appearance on that show. Early February in the tri-state area in New York City.
You believe that Hearn Choi is really injured?
No, I don't. Allow me to state the obvious because it's not a secret. It's not a secret that both Mikaela Mayer and Alicia Baumgartner have tried to get Hearn Choi in the ring and were both met with resistance. And it's not a coincidence that here and now, on the eve of what's supposed to be the undisputed title fight, a fight that the WBA ordered, now Hearn Choi is claiming that she's injured. She's been fighting once a year for the past 4 or 5 years against pedestrian-level opponents, pedestrian-level competition. Perhaps there was a time when Hearn Choi was a more serious fighter and a more serious pugilist with more serious ambitions. Perhaps there was a time. That time is over, and those days have long since passed. Which is strange. It is. But in a nutshell, she doesn't fancy the Baumgartner fight. She doesn't fancy that fight. In spite of having agreed to take on Maiva Hamadouche in South Korea about 2 or 3 years ago, before the pandemic shut everything down, and in spite of having agreed to take on Terry Harper, provided that Terry made it past the Baumgartner fight, in spite of all of this, she don't like the Baumgartner fight. She's running. I don't believe she's injured. I believe that she makes the bulk of her cash as a model more than a pugilist. She doesn't fight often enough for boxing in and of itself to be her main source of income. She's been boxing once a year for the past 5 years. She's been boxing once a year since 2018. Boxing does not appear to be Hearn Choi's sole source of income, or even her main source of income, because when she does fight, these are not big shows. Her last fight, the Vanessa Bradford fight, that place looked like a high school auditorium. Hearn Choi is also a model in her neck of the woods, and I'd wager that she makes more money outside of the ring than inside, but a part of her appeal outside of the ring is that she's a world champion boxer, and that's how they market her. And a loss, a devastating one to the likes of an Alicia Baumgartner, well, that's bad for business. If the WBA is going to move to label Hearn Choi a champion in recess as a result of her quote-unquote injury, the next highest-ranked contender is Germany's own Ramona Graves, a fighter with just a handful of fights so far as a professional, an unbeaten up-and-comer, but a little-known fighter. Behind Ramona Graves is very dangerous former champion Delphine Persoon was in action earlier this year against Ikram Kerwat, a fight that was ruled a no contest as a result of Delphine hitting a downed opponent. Behind Delphine is unbeaten up-and-comer of France, Rima Ayadi, and behind Rima, former IBF featherweight champion Jennifer Hearn. I think that Jennifer's still coming off that loss to Michaela Mayer, so I don't get the sense it'll be Jennifer that Alicia ends up fighting. Behind Jennifer is Elem Khaled, who suffered her first professional loss to Delphine Persoon very recently on the undercard of Mayweather versus Don Moore, that exhibition match. Behind Elem Khaled is Venezuelan journeywoman Elise Sanchez. Behind Elise is American standout Tiaria Brown, who, to my knowledge, isn't campaigning as a super featherweight anymore. She's actually campaigning down there at featherweight. Most familiar name in the WBA's current rank standings is the name of Delphine Persoon. She ranks in at number 2. I don't know if that's who Alicia Baumgartner will be sharing the ring with in early February for undisputed status in the featherweight division. Could be Ramona Grafe, who's ranked at number 1. Could be Delphine Persoon, who's ranked at number 2. Could be anybody in the WBA's ranked standings. But it's clear that it's not going to be Choi. She's running from the fight. No, I don't believe for a second that she's actually injured. I believe she's just protecting her unbeaten record. The timing of it all is too convenient. That's what I think she's doing. She's just biding her time, waiting for Alicia to move up in weight. When the coast is clear, she'll return. Just one man's opinion. Feel free to disagree. In men's heavyweight news, the ongoing situation involving Anthony Joshua's corner, the immaterial situation, Robert Garcia says Anthony Joshua needs to train in the U.S., get out of his comfort zone in order to improve. It appears that Anthony and Robert have parted ways. Robert says, my personal advice, and I told him, and all of his team, right before I left the next day, I told them, it doesn't matter who is his trainer. It doesn't matter if it's me again. He needs to change his camp around, Garcia told ES News. He needs to go to the United States. He needs to train in the gym where he's got Joshua Franco, where he's got Landolfo Delgado. You've got Bam. You've got Jose Ramirez, You've got young guys that are actually looking up to you. And you cannot say, oh, I don't want to spar because I'm tired. Oh, I didn't sleep enough last night, so I don't want to train today. Then the young fighters that want to be like you are going to see something and say, that's not a world champion. You've got to give them an example. You've got to be better than them so they can be what you are now. What Robert's describing, if it's the way that Robert says it is a ticker problem. Not dissimilar from what we saw Rocky Balboa experience after the first Apollo Creed fight and the first Clubber Lang fight after the death of his longtime trainer, Mickey Goldsmith. That's what Anthony Joshua needs, Garcia continued. It's not about Derek James doing a better job, Virtual Hunter doing a better job, me doing a better job than his previous trainer. It's about him getting out of his comfort zone and not being the boss and doing what he's taught to do at the place where he isn't comfortable. That's what he needs. That's what he needs. He's very talented. His power is insane, and he needs to believe in himself. He can't go by what he sees on social media. The last week or so, I heard rumors of Anthony Joshua taking a tour of the Americas. He was over there in Pensacola, Florida. I heard something about him being there with Roy. I heard rumors of him visiting Virgil Hunter, and we've seen the pictures of him in Derek James's gym. At minimum, we know that if Anthony Joshua develops an alcohol problem between now and his next fight, he's gone with Derek. Anthony called me and told me what he was doing, working out with various trainers, and I respect it, Garcia said. I understand, the way he's feeling and things, and honestly, I wish him the best, because even if it was me again, I understand they're trying to fight sometime in the spring, so that will be sometime in March or April, and having to go to camp in England, it will be very difficult for me because I know that Jose Ramirez is fighting during that time. Do you think I'm going to leave Jose? Jose fighting WBC 140-pound titleist Regis Prograrius, which is a very fucking difficult fight. But that's what Jose wants, so that's what we're going to do to have him ready for that fight. Bam is going to fight around the same time. Listen, if it's the way that Robert says it is, it sounds a lot like Anthony's looking for something in someone else that he should be able to find within himself. If it's the way that Robert says it is, and I don't think this is a case of hard feelings or a jilted trainer who's angry he got sacked. I don't get that kind of energy from Robert. in this situation.
I could think up a couple of trainers I think would be a good fit for Anthony. One is Joey Gamache.
Another is El Profesor.
Ismael Salah.
Given that so many want Anthony Joshua to return to being the offensive powerhouse that got him to where he is today, Abel Sanchez might even be a good fit because he is an offensively minded trainer.
But Robert hit the nail on the head, and if things are the way he says they are, then Anthony's got a ticker problem.
Robert Garcia admits that his own commitments at or around the same time that Anthony's supposed to return to action are at least a part of why the relationship will no longer continue. He's got a commitment to Bam, Jesse Rodriguez. He's got a commitment to Jose Ramirez, and flying out to England, that just won't work.
And that's what Anthony wants, a tailored approach. He wants these guys to come to him when really he should fly out to them and change his decorum.
He's entering into what is the second phase of his professional career as a boxer, attempting to prove that he can rebound off yet another loss, a series of losses, too, to Alexander Usyk. I myself don't think there's any shame in losing to a fighter like Usyk, but Anthony, he appears to be struggling, at least psychologically.
Going somewhere else, breathing different air, doing different things. That tends to help in those situations, getting away from the norm.
That it's time for a change goes without saying, but Anthony must be willing to change, as Barry Hearn, Eddie Hearn's father, says. Anthony is at a career crossroads, but expects him to fight Tyson Fury by the end of 2023.
The Matchroom founder acknowledges that Anthony Joshua cannot afford another loss.
I think Dillian Veit is on the list. There's a few other names. Deontay Wilder might be there. Otto Valine. It's his call. He is at a crossroads in his career. He cannot afford another loss. The elder Hearn would continue by saying that the fight the British public still crave is the one between Joshua and Tyson Fury. And despite whatever the fighters might say publicly, they know that's one that should come off in 2023. The fight we all want to see eventually is AJ against Fury. You'll get stories. Tyson will say the fight is never going to happen. Joshua will say he'd rather fight Dillian Whyte. Forget all of that. This fight has to happen, and I think it does happen at the tail end of 2023 for all the marbles. We're still a long way from the end of 2023, and plenty can happen between now and then to shake up the landscape of the heavyweight division. For now, we'll just have to see how everything in the meanwhile shakes out.
Corner situation.
Anthony Joshua is still one of the most sought-after fights in the entire heavyweight division because he's still worth a lot of money, and there are no shortage of big fights that he can have, but he has to get it together.
It just feels like he's looking for something in someone else that he should be able to find within himself.
Outside looking in, that's what it looks like.
And still, one of the bigger names in the weight class in spite of coming off of 2 consecutive losses. That's why everybody's got his name in their mouth. Anyone from Tyson Fury to Deontay Wilder to Joyce,
who very recently stated he being Anthony Joshua, never mentions my name for some reason. I don't know if he's going to want to take it, but maybe the public's going to call for it.
Joyce is playing the game, and I don't blame him, but rest assured he is playing the game.
I'm a consumer first, so I love the idea of the match, but I'm also not stupid. I also know how this works.
Not swayed by every fighter who name drops another fighter's name in an interview or in a video or a soundbite or an article.
You say that Anthony never mentions your name, but for what reason would he be mentioning you? What do you have that he needs? What have you had that he's wanted while he was unifying this division opposite the ring higher rated fighters than you are now?
Why the fuck would he have been mentioning you?
Upon hearing this, you might think that I'm somehow against Anthony fighting Joe, or that I have a bone to pick with Joe when I don't. I like Joe.
I'm just not stupid.
And I told you that Joyce was going to spark out Joseph Parker, but the thing is, you're just now getting around to fighting a guy like Joseph Parker. A guy that both Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte, Andy Ruiz, fought years ago.
Hey, you're older than them.
You're older than all of them. And you're just now getting around to fighting a guy like that. So for what reason would Anthony have mentioned you specifically, in the past? You who are on the Queensbury Promotions BT side of things. I mean, if they offered you to fight, do you think that Frank Warren would send you over there to the rival platform and the rival promoter?
Joyce is plotting his ring return for the second quarter of next year.
He plans to fight in March, then wants a Fury or Usyk showdown.
While he's harping about Anthony not mentioning him, or having not mentioned him in the past, what you have to ask yourself, if you have any critical thinking skills, is why would Anthony have mentioned Joyce?
I'm planning to have a fight in March, while all the others are taking a fight, Joyce told Sky Sports. For the summer one, I plan to go for a big one, like Usyk or Fury. I'll be ready because I'll have had one in the beginning of the year to get me going. I don't understand why people just sit around and wait for a big fight to come. It makes them rusty for when they do get the shot, and also their skills as well. You always want to keep on improving your skills and learning and growing as a fighter and correcting any mistakes and getting in these exciting fights for the fans. It is entertainment, not just let me hold on to my undefeated record.
You say that Anthony, he doesn't mention you, and he hasn't mentioned you in the past. Well, he's not mentioning you for the same reason that you're not mentioning an Arslanbek Makhmudov, or a Jalalov, a Martin Bakoli.
If he doesn't mention you, and he hasn't mentioned you in the past, it's likely for the same reason that you're not mentioning those aforementioned names that I just mentioned now.
What do you need from them?
Which is the same question that Anthony and his handlers can ask themselves about you. What have they needed from you, and what do they need from you now?
You think that I don't like the fight when I love the fucking fight, but I know how this works. Anthony Joshua is worth a lot more money than Joyce. He would be the proverbial A-side in such a fight between them, and I don't think for a second Frank Warren is just going to truck him off to Matchroom and DAZN to be content for them.
Gamesmanship aside, in order to do a fight like that I think would do very good business in the United Kingdom, in the British boxing scene, somebody would have to cross the street. And because Anthony is worth so much more money than Joe, it would have to be Joe, ideally.
Based on how things are right now, in this moment, and at this moment when Joyce is on the eve of fighting for a full-fledged alphabet title for the first time, I hardly think that's about to happen.
Joyce is the mandatory challenger by way of the WBO. Frank Warren is fully capable of staging a fight between Tyson Fury, his prize stallion at heavyweight, in-house, should Fury beat Usyk. So at this time, do you get the sense that he wants to get all entangled with Matchroom?
No.
Fury versus Joyce is a box office fight, especially in the UK. That does very good business.
Then why is Joe mentioning Anthony Joshua?
He's playing the game. Anthony is rumored to be returning to action at that same time, in March or April.
It's a rhetorical question, man. Anthony's had no reason and still doesn't have a reason to mention you now.
If we're being honest, if we're going to be honest.